Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on COVID-19 guidance for early learning and care contractors. This webinar is being presented by the California Department of Education's Early Learning and Care Division and Fiscal and Administrative Services Division. This webinar is being held on May 21st, 2021, and is scheduled to run from 11 a.m. until 12 p.m. I would like to welcome the Director of the Early Learning and Care Division, Stephen Profiter.
Thank you, Barbara, and so happy you all have decided to join us this morning. So as Barbara mentioned, my name is Stephen Profiter, and I'm the Director of the Early Learning and Care Division at the California Department of Education. And it looks like we may have advanced one slide. Can we go back one slide? And while we're doing that, I'll just keep going while we move the slides back. So on the heels of the governor's historic May revised proposals, today's webinar is full of new information. We saw some exciting investments in early education in terms of universal TK and pending a budget deal to enact UTK. We will work at the department to ensure that any expansion is developmentally appropriate, and we'll work to mitigate adverse impact to state preschool and partners in Head Start. I also want to thank you all for everything that you're doing and have been doing each and every day for the children and families in California. I think there's reminders certainly every day about what a challenging year it's been. So I also want to appreciate and thank you for your grace as we work through the transition of programs from the CDE to CDSS. And even in the absence of a pandemic, it would be a difficult transition to complete in just 1 year. We're continuing to work on solutions for short and long-term issues, and we'll continue to update you and work with you as we work towards permanent solutions. And I think with that, I'm going to ask Virginia to join.
Good morning, everyone. Virginia Early. I'm the administrator of our policy office in the Early Learning and Care Division. We've got a lot of policy-focused conversation today, so I'll save that for that. But just thank you all so much for all the work that you do in the field every day. Like Steve said, we know this isn't easy, and we greatly appreciate working together with you as partners in this work and being there with you as part of these processes. So we're working hard behind the scenes in all these conversations that are ongoing, and we'll talk more about that later. But just again, thank you for all you do. I'll now turn it over to Alana, our moderator.
Thank you, Virginia. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alana Andrade, and I'm a child development consultant in the policy office here at ELCD, and I'll be your moderator today. To help answer your questions and to make this webinar run smoothly, we have a great team here with us today. From the policy office, we have Danielle Davis, Eric Dunk, and Barbara Lindsay. From the program quality implementation office, we have Roseanne Pitts, Crystal Devlin, Deborah Rawson, Lupe Lopez, Cassandra Lewis, Brittany Sheffield, Mitchell Martinez, Jir Zong, Richard Miller, Serene Yi, and Katina Boulay. From the Child Development, Nutrition, and Fiscal Services, we have Andrea Johnson, Alan Lynch, and Kate Washington. From the Child Development Management Information System, we have Robert Halm. And to answer any of your questions regarding nutrition or food programs, we have Shashi Sharma. I also want to warmly mention our Technology Service Division, who ensure that our Zoom link is live and working each and every webinar. They also help to ensure that there's closed captioning available for you to utilize during the webinar. To turn it on, you can click on the CC button on the bottom right of your screen. Our team is committed to being as responsive as possible, and as usual, we'll not be able to answer every question. And just a reminder, the chat box is disabled. CDE will be able to share links with you, but you are unable to chat with us. Please utilize the Q&A feature to ask us any questions. And when you do ask us questions, do give us as much detail as possible before clicking that submit button. For example, which contract, age of students, etc. We've noticed that sometimes there are questions submitted that are incomplete. Please don't feel the need to rush to get a question into the queue. It's okay to take a moment to accurately type out your questions before you click send. Back over to Stephen to review the agenda for today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alana. So as you can see from the agenda, as we normally do, we've got many things to cover. So in particular, the policy office will provide an update on the governor's May revise that was announced just a week ago, as well as some important information on a tentative agreement with the Child Care Providers United Union. And then our PQI team has some additional information on program self-evaluations and the upcoming year-end celebration. While we work through questions in real time, we'll visit some of those questions that have come through the Q&A that Alana mentioned, as well as others that you may have lifted up through other modes to the department. As we do with each webinar, we'll take any questions that we're not able to answer back to address through our FAQs. Before I hand off to Virginia, I'd like to again kind of reflect on the team that puts these webinars together and express my appreciation to them. It's a wonderful team that puts a lot of time and effort into preparing for these webinars. This past year has been trying on all of us, and the CDE team exemplifies their courage and commitment in so many ways. I love this team, and just thank you, everybody. And now, without further ado or gushing, I will ask Virginia to rejoin for our next topic.
Thanks, Steve, and hello again, everyone. So the governor's May revision. You've probably at this point seen that there is a universal transitional kindergarten proposal, or UTK as we call it for short. So I'm going to briefly go over that proposal, but just want to note, you know, we had sent out an email to the field about this last week. We really want to, you know, focus on how historic and exciting these proposals are, as well as how they're putting CDE in a leadership role, while highlighting the importance of early education and creating additional opportunities for pre-K through third grade alignment. We also know that many of you have concerns about how this proposal will impact your programs. And so, as Steve mentioned at the top of the webinar, we want to just start by saying we're committed to working together with you to address any unintended consequences. This includes a variety of things, which I'll go into more later, but I wanted to start with that before we went into the details there. And we, our staff will be working deeply and intensively with the legislature, the Department of Finance, and the governor's administration to support refinement of these proposals and mitigate those unintended consequences, and then work together with our stakeholders as we move forward. So with that, I'll just start by summarizing the proposal for those of you that may not have seen it or may like a refresher. So universal transitional kindergarten would be implemented over a couple years. So in the first year of this, there would be some resources for professional development and facilities and planning, which I'll talk about on a later slide. But the main sort of change is adding those districts that want to serve children with birthdays between December 3rd and the end of the school year. So allowing them to serve those kids who are in early admittance TK or ETK from the beginning of the school year and receive the full average daily attendance for those children. And currently they only get reimbursed when the child turns 5. So the districts are only required to serve kids that have birthdays that turn 5 between September 2nd and December 2nd in the first year. Those are required to be admitted to TK. But then there's this option, if the districts choose, for them to expand in that first year and receive funds for kids with birthdays between December and the end of June for that year. Then in the second year, in 22-23, the school year, the birthday window gets bumped out 3 months. So districts are required to serve kids with 5th birthdays between September 2nd and March 2nd, and those are required to be admitted into TK. And similar to the previous year, any child with a birthday between March 2nd and the end of the school year can be served by a district, and districts receive funding for those kids for the entire school year if they choose to serve them. Next slide, please. So then the third year, 23-24, it extends another 3 months. So now it's the 5th birthday between September 2nd and June 2nd. Those are the ones that the language says shall be admitted to TK, which means that there's a requirement there. So, and similarly, any children with birthdays between June 2nd and the end of the school year, districts can choose to serve them. They receive full funds for them, but they're not required to. And then finally, there'll be full implementation in 24-25 for all kids, all who have, who are in that age bracket the year before kindergarten. So there are a couple of resources, a couple areas where the governor's May revision is proposing to change TK. And a big issue that we had raised concerns about in the past around the TK adult to child ratio has been, there's been $740 million ongoing resources appropriated to address that, which would pay for an additional staff person in TK classrooms. The governor's information shares that for many classrooms, this will reduce the adult to child ratios from 1 to 24 to 1 to 12. There's also, as I mentioned, $250 million for a planning grant to allow districts to plan around how this is going to work. There's $190 million for facilities, knowing that districts may not have enough classroom spaces for this expansion. And then there's $50 million for workforce development for both the California State Preschool Program and transitional kindergarten. And finally, there's $10 million for CDE to update the preschool learning foundations, which you all likely know what are, but to sort of capture what applies to transitional kindergarten as part of that piece. So as I mentioned, and maybe we can come back to this a little bit, but that's a brief overview of universal TK. So now let's go to the next slide. What about the California State Preschool Program? So, oh, sorry, can we go back to the slide? I'm so sorry, I missed one thing. Another piece of the universal TK proposal is that just at school districts that have high rates of children who are eligible for free or reduced price meals, there will be universal after-school programs implemented, which will be wrapping around transitional kindergarten to create a longer day. So there's also proposed that would be universal by 25-26, and that this would be a no-cost after-school and summer programs with 9 hours of developmentally appropriate academics and enrichment. And specific to TK students, these programs would be required to maintain adult to student ratios of 1 to 10. So knowing that our TK and our kindergarten students that are maybe in these after school programs will need developmentally appropriate ratios. So thank you, Barbara, for going back there for a second. So now ready to go to the next slide. So state preschool. So the state preschool proposal for the May revise includes maintained funding for state preschool programs. There is a piece in the May revision with the development of a comprehensive plan for the future of the state preschool program. As I mentioned to you all, we are strongly invested in ensuring that any of you that are a state preschool program contractor are supported in your work to recruit eligible children to your programs. We are strongly committed to continuing our critical partnership with Head Start so that any of these investments that we make have a larger cumulative impact through more children overall having access to high quality early education experiences. And we know that California currently only serves a fraction of those eligible California State Preschool Program and Head Start children. But we also know that mixed income programs have stronger and longer lasting positive child outcomes. So we're very hopeful that the TK investment will let California serve many more of the unserved 4-year-olds across the state. And we look forward to working with the administration as they look to this comprehensive plan for state preschool on how we can leverage what we have in state preschool to serve our 3-year-olds and any 4-year-olds that wish to access it. So that's something that is proposed to be developed in the next year, and we plan on being very involved in that. The last piece for state preschool is a cost of living adjustment, a 1.7% adjustment, which will impact the standard reimbursement rate for our state preschool programs. Now, I will say there are other pieces as we go to our next slide around from our union tentative agreement that also affects state preschool, and these are also included in the governor's May revision. So the piece about, just as a bit of background on this, the Child Care Providers United Union tentative agreement. So when AB 82 was passed, there was a work group that was formed which comprised of the state bargaining team and the union itself. And the goal of this work group was to come together to utilize any remaining CRRSA funds in positive and efficient ways for state subsidized providers. And so while the union represents family child care providers, the state also made sure that items in this included pieces not represented by the union, for example, centers, would be given as well. So the agreement, there are a couple key points that I'll walk through on the next slide, but just want to talk first about what this is. So it was signed, the second COVID-19 relief tentative agreement. It was signed between the Child Care Providers United Union and the administration on April 19th, 2021. And as I mentioned, it was proposed as part of the May revision. And our understanding is that the administration will shortly be releasing trailer bill language that details those pieces of the tentative agreement for the legislature to vote on. Now, the trailer bill will need to be approved by the legislature and signed by the governor before becoming law. So just a couple notes about how this works. So let's go to the next slide and we'll start walking through what's in there. So there are a lot of pieces here, but overall the tentative agreement includes continuation of family fee waivers into the next fiscal year, $600 per child stipends to providers based on subsidized children enrolled. And so state preschool is included in that. And this is based on March 2021 data. There are also stipends on licensed capacity, and these will be distributed by DSS, the California Department of Social Services, and there are various stipend amounts based on what the licensed capacity is. We defer any questions about those licensed capacity stipends to the Department of Social Services since we won't be administering them. There are also an additional 16 paid non-operational days for providers in 21-22, continuation of the hold harmless flexibilities, and our understanding is that this includes both the voucher and the direct contract side. There's continuation of the parent signature waiver, so on attendance records and/or invoices until the pandemic is over, as long as the provider attempts to collect the signature and is unsuccessful. there's $25 million for the Child Care Initiative project to help build out capacity in various parts of the state, and $10.6 million for the California Inclusion and Behavior Consultation Network project, which is going to provide mental health and behavioral consultation services for child care and development programs. So all of these programs, all these items have yet to be signed into law and ratified, as I mentioned. So we'll also have more details on specifics once the trailer bill language is proposed. Until then, you can access the agreement, the signed agreement, which is on the CalHR website, and I'm going to ask Brittany to put the link into the chat now. And with that, I suspect many of you have questions about these things, so keep putting them in the chat, and I'll start looking over that while I turn it over to Roseanne for her piece.
Thank you, Virginia. Wow, a lot of budget information and tons of questions coming in. I'm going to change focus just a bit to give you a quick update from the Program Quality Implementation Office. Just a reminder that the program self-evaluation, known as the PSE, is due to our office on Tuesday, June 1st. For those of you who have already submitted, thank you very much. We appreciate it. For those of you who have not yet submitted, you have 11 days to do so. So let me give you a few just little tidbits. Alice in our office processes the program self-evaluations. So I asked her just how are things coming in, and are there any reminders that I should give to the field. This year, the PSE is being submitted via a SNAP survey. You only need to submit one per agency or contractor. Even if you hold multiple contracts with CDE, you will only provide one PSE, and that will be reflective of all of the different contracts you hold. Please read Management Bulletin 2105. It has all the information and directions. It also has all the questions and the choices that you can choose. So you will know ahead of time how to do it. When you actually get into the survey, it won't let you start and stop. So you have to do it all in one setting. But there's only 9 questions, and it really is very, very simplified this year. Remember that you're going to choose all the choices that pertain to your program, and your program may be very diverse and include lots of different choices. And then we also have an other choice. If you would like to give us, if none of the above meet what you did, you could put it under other, or if you want to add additional information that you have done to complete that question. Please ensure that your agency name and your vendor number are correct. We have quite a few that have not come in with correct names or vendor numbers, so that takes a little more time to process. If you have any questions can be submitted to FY 2021 PSE@cde.ca.gov, and we will be happy to get back to you as soon as we can with an answer. Thank you all very much. We look forward to receiving your PSE. And now I'm going to turn it over to Joycelyn, who has information about an upcoming big event.
Thank you, Roseanne. Did you ever know that you are our heroes and you're everything we would like to be? We can fly higher than eagles, because you are the wind beneath our wings. The ELCD is so excited to present to you our year-end celebration. You are heroes. The celebration is to acknowledge each of our contracting agencies and recognize your relentless dedication over the years, as well as your commitment to operating high-quality early learning and care programs. We want to thank you, our contractors, who submitted one photo for your agency and words of thanks to be included in the celebration. We received over 80 submissions, and we cannot wait to share these heroes with you. The submission deadline has passed. Aw, I'm sorry. And we are unable to accept any more additional photos for this event. We are now in production mode. Oh, the places you will go on Wednesday, June 9th, 2021 at 10 o'clock a.m. The entire ELCD staff is preparing for a fun and engaging celebration, and we hope that you join us. So please see the announcement, which is coming with more details on how to log in, or if you have questions, please contact Roxanne Fiddler at rfidler@cde.ca.gov if you have any questions. Now I will turn it over to Alana for the question and answer portion of this webinar.
Joycelyn, you made me tear up. Thank you so much for being here and presenting in that way. I cannot wait until June 9th, and I'm not even a contractor. Okay, so I do see a lot of questions in here, and I am going to call on Virginia to just sort of do a PSA for everyone who's asking a specific question about TK children in CSPP, and are they eligible for this upcoming fiscal year?
Okay, so the question is about CSPP and whether those families that are eligible for CSPP and also eligible for TK, what the choice, okay. Mm-hmm. So the governor's budget does not change the age definition for CSPP. As a result, the current proposed language would mean that if a child has a 5th birthday between September 2nd and December 2nd, they would not be eligible for a state preschool that year. Now, keep in mind this is a proposal, and we know that many folks are advocating to the legislature and the governor that that definition be changed so that families with birthdays in that range could fully choose between TK and state preschool. However, that's not proposed as part of the governor's proposal. That's not to say it won't happen, but just sharing what's in the proposal. So we'll keep you updated as things change about where that lands. Now I want to be clear. So any child that has a 5th birthday after December 2nd and the end of the school year, they could choose, if their district offers TK, they could choose between TK and state preschool. So we often call those kids the early admittance ETK kids. It's TK where the school district isn't required to offer it, but can offer it if they want to. Under the current fiscal year, districts don't receive funding for any children served in ETK until that child turns 5. Starting next school year, under the governor's proposal, school districts would receive funds for those children beginning at the beginning of the school year. So any child that's in that ETK range, which is December 2nd to the end of the school year, June 30th, their statute allows them to be enrolled in state preschool or enrolled in TK if it's offered. Does that help clear up things?
I'm sure there will still be some questions as there's a lot to unpack, but I do appreciate that thorough explanation, Virginia. I would like to
and I know there's another question from Jessica at 11:20 that I had flagged to answer live about under the governor's proposal, if that families would have a choice to send kids to CSPP instead of TK. So as I mentioned, the governor's proposal isn't changing the definition of state preschool. So that means if a kid has a March birthday, at full implementation for universal TK, that kid with a March birthday could choose between TK and state preschool. It's just that if a child has a birthday between September and December, then they could choose whether to attend TK or not, but CSPP would not be an option.
Okay. Was there anything else that you saw flagged, Virginia?
Lots of things. Should I just keep talking?
Okay, well, I'll give you a pause and then I'm going to ask Andrea to come and speak because there was a lot of questions about if current hold harmless flexibilities would be continued into the next fiscal. Virginia, we can hear you typing. Would be continued into the next fiscal year. And so I just like Andrea to come and speak to us about how there are things that we know and there are things that we are waiting to know.
Yeah, thanks, Alana. So we are still, as Virginia indicated earlier, we're still waiting for trailer bill language to be released, and we hope that will be any moment now. CDE, as we have shared, has been advocating for the hold harmless to continue through the fiscal year 21-22 year. So we are just waiting for that trailer bill language to be released. So yeah, we can't confirm that just quite yet until we get that trailer bill language. And then I just do quickly want to explain for the direct service contractors, there are questions about what does hold harmless mean. So for direct service contractors, that means the California State Preschool, which is a CSPP contract, the General Child Care, which is CCTR, the migrant child care programs, and the, there's one more, the CHAN contract type. For the hold harmless for those direct service center-based contract types, what that means is that contractors in this current year have been based off of the lesser of your expenses, your program expenses, and your total contract amount. So meaning attendance and enrollment is not taken into consideration when we determine reimbursement, because we know that the attendance and enrollment, of course, has been reduced quite a bit this year. So we're hoping that those that can continue into the 21-22 fiscal year. Waiting for that trailer bill language though. I think there was also a question about the family fee waivers. Same answer, we're waiting for that trailer bill language to be released so we can see exactly what has been proposed.
Thank you, Andrea. Just like you, Field, we are also waiting for answers and we'll share them as soon as we know. So there's a few other questions that I'm going to call on you again, Virginia. So there's one about the P-3 and its historical proposals. And is it possible for the governor to revise those proposed for budgets so that TK is paid under Prop 98 instead of general funds per the master plan guidance?
So let me clarify, because I think some people are getting confused by this. So with the expansion of funding in TK, it's a multi-billion-dollar investment over a period of several years, phased in over time. Because of the way Proposition 98 works, if you add more programs into it, there's a process where it's called rebenching the guarantee. And I'm not a Proposition 98 expert. I feel like they're just a small handful of folks in the state that really know the ins and outs of it, and but I'll do my best. So basically what they're doing is, because there are going to be more students coming into the system, and Proposition 98 is a formula, adding more funding, adding more students through TK means that the pot of money in the state budget that is Proposition 98 grows. And so even though the governor is proposing to pay for transitional kindergarten with Proposition 98, because they've rebenched the guarantee, and because that the amount of students that are put into the calculation for the size of the total Proposition 98 pot of funding set growth, which means that that may be why some folks are thinking that this is coming out of the non-Proposition 98 side of the budget, because as the amount the state is required, is spending on education is increasing, that means that there's less money outside of Proposition 98. So hopefully that helps with the questions, and if there are more detailed questions about exactly how rebenching works, we can follow up with you. And if anyone has more expertise on Prop 98 than I do and feels like I maybe said something that was confusing, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we can follow up with everyone else.
Excellent. Thank you, Virginia. There was also a lot of questions, but I'll pull off one about it. If the governor was aware of the effect of what UTK might have on existing preschools and the preschool systems.
Yeah, so you may have seen, and maybe not because there was so much, and you may have been reeling by the time we got to this slide, but the governor's May revision does recognize the impact on state preschool. As I mentioned, it says that it talks about how the governor's administration will be developing a comprehensive plan for implementation starting in 2022-23 to support state preschool providers to maintain their contracts while also transitioning to serve younger children in alignment with the master plan for early learning and care, which has pieces around ensuring all eligible 3-year-olds are served in the California State Preschool Program. And I briefly touched on this, but we know that there are a lot of eligible 3-year-olds that are not served currently. And so we're really committed as a department to working with the administration on their plan for the future of state preschool, but also working with all of you to help you to work together and determine how can we get more eligible 3-year-olds into our programs. Where are the 3-year-olds that could most benefit from these programs? And if we look at the census data, the census shows us that they're there, but maybe they come from more unstable backgrounds, they're harder to find. And so what do we need to do to help those programs, help those children find the California State Preschool Program? Because we know there's so many of those 3-year-olds that could really, really benefit that aren't getting it right now.
Thank you, Virginia. There are definitely a lot in the Q&A that are calling upon you specifically for some questions. So I'll give you a moment to actually respond to them, and I'll call on somebody else. So there are a lot of questions about if the distance learning will be continuing in the next fiscal year. So I'd like to ask Roseanne or Cassandra to come and address that, please.
I'm sorry, Alana, but I don't have an answer to that. I don't know, Virginia, if that's been discussed. I don't have an answer to that question, but I would be happy to take it forward.
Oh, okay. I saw that there were some responses. Go ahead, Virginia.
Sorry, go ahead, Alana.
Go ahead, Virginia.
The question was around distance learning and what's the future for distance learning. I think that's one area where, as I mentioned, the agreement, the tentative agreement with the union has a continuation of hold harmless. But what we don't have is the trailer bill right now. And so when that trailer bill comes out, we'll be able to better answer those questions on where distance learning will be allowed and where and what those rules will be. And then keep in mind that anything at this point that we're talking about that's in the May revision, it's giving you a sense of where the administration is going, but it's still very much a proposal. And the legislature will be meeting in the coming weeks to come up with their own proposal. And we've heard, we've had several budget hearings earlier this week where there were a number of questions that members of the legislature asked about rates, for example. So just know that these conversations are ongoing. We certainly said in those budget hearings that we thought rates for state preschool needed to be part of the conversation as well as some other aspects around a TK teacher pipeline, for example. So these conversations are ongoing, and we'll share the information on proposals as we have them, but know that these are still proposals at the moment. And then also we urge you to share your voices with the legislature and the governor as they move toward a final agreement and final law.
Okay, so I'm not giving Virginia much of a break, but there's another question here regarding preschool foundations and if they apply to TK. As the foundations are currently the competencies for 3- and 4-year-olds. But
Yeah. So thank you so much for that question. So current law, and I'm sorry for my typing noises because I'm pulling up current law. Current law, it's actually in Education Code 48,000, says that transitional kindergarten programs need to, let's see what the actual language. It says that it's the intent of the legislature that TK curriculum be aligned with the California Preschool Learning Foundations. So definitely hear your question. This proposal around that the governor is making is to make sure that you know, a lot has happened in terms of research in the last since these were first developed, and making sure that that this is reflecting that expansion, making a little bit more clear what TK classrooms are supposed to be doing, and providing more around that. So trying to just tease out a little bit more, especially for our K-12 partners, things that may be the most relevant to TK. And obviously, we'll want to look as a whole when we do that at CDE to make sure that, you know, if there are things that would need to be adapted for state preschool, that would be part of it too.
thank you. There are a few comments in here where folks are saying thank you for re-explaining that it is a proposal and is not currently set law. Let me see. There's a lot of just comments in here, and we do recognize that there are a lot of answers that we're not able to give you, as there is not one trailer bill, and 2, it's not been ratified as law. There's just a lot of things that are proposals and a lot of things that are what ifs, and that doesn't make anything easier. So we do see that there are still a lot of open questions, and we just want to acknowledge that. There are a lot of questions, having to do with TK and CSVP and age cutoffs and eligibility. I would like to see if Danielle is available to just sort of reiterate what the TK age cutoff and the CSVP age cutoff would be.
Sure. So for TK age eligibility are children that turn 5 between September 2nd and December 2nd. And so CSVP eligibility is for children that turn 4 before December 1st. So if you have a child that turns 5 after December 2nd, then they are able to be enrolled in state preschool, or they can go to early TK like Virginia said earlier. But at this point, that is what current definitions are for TK age children and eligibility for state preschool age 4-year-olds.
Thank you, Danielle. And also thank you for your quick responses in the Q&A. I'm sure everyone appreciates them. So Virginia, I have another question for you. There's been some comments about why the COLA was different for K through 12 versus early learning and care.
The short answer to that is we'd like to know the answer to that question too, and have actually testified at budget hearings asking for the same COLA that applies to K-12 to also be applied to our programs.
Okay. Let's see. There was a question about when the new CSPP program program eligibility or program guidelines were going to be released. I'd like to either call on Danielle or Kate to answer that, or perhaps Andrea.
Sure, I can answer it. It just in line with every other year, we try to get the funding terms and conditions and the program requirements out by June 1st at the latest. But these are always dependent upon approval by the Department of Finance and the Department of General Services. So we await approval from them before we can release to the field. But as soon as we can, just like every other previous year, we will be releasing those hopefully by June 1st.
Thank you very much. So Danielle, while I have you here, there's been a lot of questions about group sizes and classrooms and ratios. Perhaps you can just clarify what the group size and classroom ratios are for the current year.
So are you talking about, there was a lot of questions about the cohort guidance. Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
Correct.
So we have gotten a lot of questions about cohort guidance and who it applies to. We had the Department of Social Services on a couple webinars ago to explain that they have updated guidance that only those programs that are served within counties in the purple tier are required to follow the 16-person cohorts. If you are no longer in the purple tier in your county, you will follow any local public health guidance if they have some for childcare. And if they don't, then your program will determine the groups as small as possible for your program that you can operate with.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Virginia, I know that you are also typing a response to a question, but there was also a question regarding the workforce development proposal and what does that mean?
Awesome. So thank you. So this question is one that we've definitely brought up at budget hearings. Like I mentioned, we've pointed out that the state preschool rate is about $4,000 per child lower than the regional market rate, which we see for similar age children in centers, which we see as a big inequity in our system. The workforce development proposal is $50 million. It's a competitive grant that would go to LEAs for, the language talks about it, how it would either increase the number of credentialed teachers that are meeting TK requirements or increase the competencies of either state preschool or TK teachers or kindergarten teachers to enhance their ability to, in a couple of areas. And those areas are instruction and inclusive classrooms, supporting dual language learners, enhancing social emotional learning, implementing trauma-informed and restorative practices, and mitigating implicit biases to eliminate exclusionary discipline. So we hear you on the wanting to support pay increases to state preschool staff. The workforce development proposal is more around the training to both increase the number of TK teachers and improve the competencies of existing state preschool and TK teachers. There are the stipends that I mentioned earlier as part of the agreement. So the state preschool programs would get the $600 per child stipend, and then they'd also get, based on their license capacity, a stipend for that. So the smallest stipend, a one-time stipend based on license capacity, is $3,500, and the biggest one is $6,500, and it all depends on license capacity.
Thank you, Virginia. I do see some questions in here about cohort guidance and about tiers and whatnot. Those questions would be better asked to CDSS as they are with their CCL guidelines. I'm not sure that unless Danielle would like to come and speak to that a bit more, but that's where that guidance lives. Let's see. I would like to call on, we have only a few more minutes and I know that we're still answering some questions. I'd like to call on Stephen actually. So there are still a lot of questions and more so comments in here about, sort of frustrations about some preschool programs that might need to convert to either a CCTR or turning into a TK. Is there something that you can speak to about that?
Yeah, so I think I would just kind of reiterate what's been shared already is that these are proposals. Although at the same time of saying they're proposals, there is some the idea around UTK that the administration has proposed is also shared by a number of legislators. So you kind of have both the administration and the legislature with some support. So there's a likelihood here, but I think the other thing, and I think Virginia shared this too, is around there's a bit in the governor's budget proposal summary around a plan, the administration coming up with a comprehensive plan for that would be implemented in 2022-23, coinciding with the beginning of the expansion of TK. But this plan would address state preschool programs and how to support state preschool programs to maintain their contracts while transitioning to serve younger children. So this is, there's some alignment here with the master plan in terms of serving younger children. So I think that's probably what I would respond to those concerns. And I think we're at CDE, we're committed to continuing to work to mitigate impact. We know that when TK first was implemented a few years back, there was some concern, from contractors, from field, and some adjustments were made. There were adjustments to statute in terms of age, eligibility for state preschool. And we really see that, assuming the proposal goes through, this, if it's a work group, we don't know exactly how it's going to be implemented, this plan, or how it's going to be developed. But stakeholders will need to be involved, right? So all of your voices, and we're looking forward to working with the administration as part of that plan to work to mitigate impact, adverse impact. That is, positive impact is always, we won't mitigate positive impact.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So I'm going to have that be the last question. And while our team is continuing to answer some opened questions, I'll read off everyone's favorite part, which is our resources. So the ELCD COVID-19 guidance webpage is where you can find the webinar slides and transcriptions. And we do recognize that we do not have all of those up right now. It does take a while for us to get through our accessibility in order to make them pop on there. So do give us some patience on that. There's also a place where you can find our management bulletins and our frequently asked questions. And that can be located at https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/re/ELCD COVID-19.asp. You can also always submit questions to ELCD Emergencies email inbox at elcdemergency at cde.ca.gov. To find your assigned PQI Office Regional Consultant, please visit https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/cd/ci/assignments.asp. As usual, consultants are most easily reached by email. However, you can also call 916-322-6233 during business hours, where you can reach the consultant of the day. Stephen, back to you to close us out.
Thanks, Alana. Trying to find the mute button. So I think I'd like to start my closing by saying that, you know, this TK proposal is a change, and change can be scary. I think we've all experienced that, felt that in to some extent this year, or this year plus, whether it's because of the pandemic or because of the transition to CDSS. But please know that regardless of, you know, this proposal, what happens, please know that CDE, you know, will have your back. You know, we will advocate on behalf of our programs. We always, you know, we want to work for what is best for children and families, and, you know, making it, and our programs are, you know, no exception. So so I just wanted to say that. But I know we're running short of time, so I'll get back to closing us out. So thank you all for joining us this morning. A little bit later start than normal. We hope you'll join us for our next webinar. An announcement on the date and time of that webinar will be coming shortly. But, you know, in the meanwhile, please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. I think yesterday was mental health day. I forget exactly, but, you know, self-care is something that you know, we all need to do to make sure that we can be here, you know, for for the next challenge, so that we can be here for, you know, for next year to continue to support children and families. So please take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll feels like we're almost there. We'll get back to normal, in-person education, and just, yeah, looking forward to seeing you there. Take care, everybody.